very, very unsustainable for us. As far as foreign exchange reserves are concerned, and I know this is a question that's burning in everybody's mind, the rupee dollar rate. The foreign exchange reserves are somewhere in the range of about 285 odd billion dollars. The good thing about it is a large chunk of it, primarily the largest chunk of it, I think about 260 odd billion dollars, is made up of foreign currency assets. So it's actually cash. Now that is a huge amount of reserves available, but that can all disappear very quickly if our trade deficit keeps ballooning and if we have no way of funding our current account deficit. Now the pressure on the rupee today, I think in the last year I was reading that the rupee depreciated by about 18 or 20%. The pressure on the rupee is primarily because of all these deficits. It's not just one reason, it's a combination of all these three or four factors. The fiscal deficit, the trade deficit telescoping into the current account deficit, inflation fueled by deficit financing, and just poor governance, adding to all kinds of policy problems. I must tell you that one of the worst possible policy formulations that we could have come up with is this proposal for retroactive tax, which a lot of the literature is, the net is buzzing with that, about how that one policy formulation alone is the one that's really frightening investors. Now, if that formulation is Pranab Mukherjee's legacy for us, I am afraid he would have negated his entire 60 years in public life with just that one articulation, because that's going to put so much pressure on our current account deficit, because foreign investment is simply not going to come at the rate it should come with just that one policy formulation. And we have now rewarded him with the highest constitutional office in the country. So the moral of the story is, you get rewarded for destruction. But be that as it may, what are the prospects? I am one of those people who is very bullish on the economy, simply because I believe that India has survived despite the government. And I would not like to give any credit to the government, really. India was great. The economy was the best, the strongest economy even 1,000 years ago. And all kinds of people, investors, traders, merchants, everybody flocked to India to loot, plunder and rape the Indian economy. In fact, in the Travancore State Manual, my grandfather, Sadasya Tilakan T.K. Velupille, who wrote it, says very clearly in volume 2 that millions of surstices of gold were withdrawn from the treasuries of Rome to pay for exports from Travancore. And Muziris, right down the road from here, was one of the most important trading centers. And Roman traders came here in hordes to buy basically and sell in Rome. And very interestingly, the Padmanabha Swami temple, which has this huge treasure, was found to have hundreds of thousands of Roman era coins, gold coins, attesting to this whole statement that millions of surstices of gold were withdrawn from the treasuries of Rome. So that was the standing of this part of our country, of our country in ancient times. And everybody came to India to take advantage of the economic wealth that we had. And I don't believe India is a poor country at all. I've never believed that India has ever been a poor country. I think we are one of the richest countries in the world. The treasure in the temple, I would put at something in the range of 30 to 50 billion dollars, not counting for antiquity. That tells you what wealth resides in this country. On a more practical level, the $1.4 trillion economy hides fully 50% below the line. So if you do that, if you do the math, that's something in the range of 500 to 700 billion dollars, which is sitting in cash, Benami property, and gold in lockers. Who said we are a poor country? We have only believed that we are poor. Actually, we have been extremely rich, even in cash. Forget the cultural heritage, etc. We've had huge amounts of cash in this country, and we have just not learned how to use it. In many of the articles and speeches that I've given lately, I've said that we have to monetize this. We have to bring it above the line. Why not legalize it and put a 10% tax on all the black money that's held? So if $500 billion is there sitting in lockers, not being used productively, apply a 10% tax, and the government will be richer, the fiscal deficit is going to get controlled, and all the money we want in infrastructure investment is going to come unlocked, and the whole story will be very different. We'll give an incentive for people to make money, which is good. So I think the 1.2 billion people in this country who are growing at the rate of about 1.2% per year, adding about 20 million people every year, this is the true wealth of our nation. These 1.2 billion people command a huge amount of creativity and can-do attitude that will see them achieve much higher rates of growth. Now you and I have worked and struggled in the pre-reform era, and we have still managed to do reasonably well, despite everything that the government threw at us. I don't think the government's ability to control this economy remains very significant now, which is why I'm bullish that the creativity of the average Indian and the technology that we all have helped create will take us on a growth path of nothing less than 6% over the next year and thereafter. Which then brings me to the root causes, and I'll conclude with that. The root causes of the twin deficits, the fiscal deficit, the current account deficit, and inflation, and so on and so forth. I believe there are three motherhood deficits which are the root causes of all these other deficits. The first is the leadership deficit. We simply don't have leadership in this country. We never have had, and that I think has been the tragedy of our country. We have not had the kind of leadership that our people deserve. That's a separate subject altogether. Historically, we have never had good leadership. We have always played one against the other. The princely states played one against the other, and in the face of the invader, we made deals. We chose expediency over principle. So the leadership deficit is alive and kicking in our country. And because people in positions of authority are not necessarily leaders, there is a governance deficit, which means simply the kind of governance that is required to give stability to the economy, to control inflation, to eliminate the deficits, fiscal and current. We don't have that kind of governance. Why? Because there are leakages through corruption and inefficiency. That's the governance deficit. And the third one is the information deficit. And let me explain this for a minute. I believe that we have a terrible information deficit in this country, even though we have RTI, even though India is the home of the fabled IT industry globally. Our internet penetration is just about 10%. And even with that 10%, the size of the internet economy is so significant that if it were a sector by itself, it would be 19th in the list of sectors in the Indian economy, with just 10% penetration of internet into the population. I believe that it is our duty to invest huge amounts in information technology, in infrastructure, to help the penetration of internet go from 10 to 20% in the next 5 years. And I think that's far more important than investment in roads, ports, airports, etc., highways, etc. Because if we did this, then we will address not only the information deficit, we'll address the governance deficit in a very big way. So having said all that, I think the Indian economy can very easily become the top economy, or at least the second economy in the world, long before the BRICS prediction of 2050. But for that, we have got to address these three deficits. And I hope as a country, all of us can work towards that and achieve it in our lifetime. Thank you.